The biggest skill gap in FC is not in how you attack, it's in how you defend. What's up guys, Big Feds here with an updated guide on how to defend like a top 1% player no matter the meta. Defending's hard this year. Attacking is way more forgiving than defending, and you're easily punished if you make a simple mistake when defending. So it's even more important this year than any other year to actually be good at defending. I've always been of the opinion that the skill gap in FC or FIFA has always been in how good of a defender you are, not how good of an attacker you are. While attacking might win you 1 or 2 games, if you can defend, you're not just going to be able to win 1 or 2 more games, you're going to be able to reach higher ranks in general. Learning how to defend properly gives you a much higher ceiling as a player. In this guide, we'll be going through which defensive principle I use to help me defend. All of the examples in this guide are straight from my stream or my coaching sessions. You can find info on both in the description below. Jockey is something I use in almost every defensive action and will be used in most of the tips in the video. It's all about putting yourself in control of the situation. What it does is it makes your player go from a normal standing position into a position where he's on his toes, ready to defend. Now there are 2 ways you can use this: normal jockeying, which is moving around, and sprint jockey. However, I wouldn't recommend sprint jockeying too often, seeing how unresponsive manual defending is this year. I mainly use jockey and small motions to keep my position. If I want to make a longer run, I'm better off using normal sprint and then pressing jockey when I get into the position I want to be at. To be able to make good decisions when you're defending, you need to scan properly. Scanning is something I'm going to mention in almost everything because it is such a fundamental aspect of how good you are as a player. It's what separates average players from top players. A lot of problems that occur when defending is because you're just ball watching. You're not watching for where the most dangerous space is. You need to think of it as 2 pictures, right? You have where the ball is now and what's happening, and where the danger will be next. The best defenders constantly scan to merge those 2 pictures to be able to stop attacks before they happen or to be ready for whatever could possibly happen. So when scanning, you need to look for the same things as when you're attacking. Where are your teammates? Which way are you moving and which spaces are you covering? Where is your opponent? Which way is he moving and which area is he looking to occupy? And lastly, you need to look at space. Where is it most dangerous? And where can you give it away? We focus on covering the dangerous space and allow him to pass to the space that we gave away. By defending the space that we think is dangerous, eventually when he comes there, we are in a good shape and allows us to win the ball. You cannot defend the entire pitch. The key is choosing which space you're willing to give up and which spaces you want to protect. Good teams don't try to cover everything because it is impossible. They guide their opponent into the areas that are least dangerous, where they can take a few more risks to win the ball back or force their opponent to start over. Rule of thumb is you want to protect the center spaces because that is the most dangerous area to get a shot off, which means that the areas that you do want to give away is out wide. Second kind of space you want to protect is the space between your lines, which means the space in between your team, because when the ball gets there, that is how your opponent can force you to break your shape. And if you don't react, a large part of your team has been taken out of the equation. What this also means is that you always want to concede backwards passes because they don't threaten your goal in any sense, and they don't allow your opponent to disrupt your shape. It doesn't matter if you're playing a low block, a middle block, or a high block. You always want your team to be compact. This means horizontal and vertical. When you're defending, your main priority isn't to win the ball back, it's to make sure your opponent doesn't score. To do that, you need to shrink the pitch as much as possible. Don't try to read your opponent and move a player out of position so you can get the ball quicker. Instead, keep your shape, and when he gets the ball to a player, then you apply press. And this is something you see in real football as well. You can see Szoboszlai is making sure to stay near the box and compact and only moves up after the player gets the ball. You need to be comfortable giving your opponent the ball even if he's close to your box, as long as you don't jeopardize your defensive shape. An easy way to do this is just picking your striker, wingers, or midfielders to track back to help your defensive shape stay tagged. And this is effective because a lot of times your opponent won't be scanning behind him, so it looks like the player is coming from a dark spot that he's not paying attention to. But you also need to know when you have to switch to the defenders, because top players are always going to be able to punish you if you don't know when to use your central backs. Patience and composure is key. Keep in mind when you're defending the base, not the man or the ball. What that means is whenever your opponent is running towards you, don't just gift him the space you're standing in. Stay there and let him move into you. As you can see in the example currently playing, I pull one of my center backs out of position because I'm impatient and it puts me in a bad spot. When I notice that happens, I choose the space I want to defend and I stay there. I move backwards towards the goal, but I'm still in that space. I don't want to give it to him. And when he comes into that space, that is the trigger for us to win the ball. This is one of the most fundamental principles when it comes to defending. We've talked a bit about staying compact when defending, which is something I always want to do, but you still need to press the ball to force a decision from the attacker. And that is where press and cover comes into play. When one defender steps up to press, another has to slide over and cover the gap that opens up. And in FC, it's very easy to do. You use second man press to get one of your defenders to press the ball holder while you manually cut off the space. Second man press is easy for the attacker to dribble through. So knowing when to switch at the right time to win the ball is what's going to help you to be a good defender. A lot of people this year are just dribbling around in circles waiting for you to mess up. So when you're defending 1v1 or when you're defending your opponent that's spinning around, he wants you to commit so he can exploit the gap behind you. The more patient and composed you are by standing where you're supposed to be, the more likely you are to win the ball back. I'd like to imagine it like this, right? You have a ball, you have your goalkeeper, and then you have your player. Imagine there's a line from the ball to your goalkeeper that you want to put your player on. And then your goal is never to read the opponent. You just follow the decisions he makes. And when you're on it, you can move up to apply pressure. Pay attention to this example currently playing in the background. Every single time I switch player, my immediate goal is to get in between the opponent and my goal before I apply pressure. So you always want to find that positioning before you move up to press. And then as you slowly get closer, when there's an opportunity, obviously you're supposed to take it. When you're outnumbered while defending, there's only one thing you can have in mind, and that is delay, 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 and delay. Don't rush anything. Your focus has to be on delay your opponent as long as possible until your team can help you out. Partial team press is really important and really effective this year. You double tap R1 and you'll see two of your teammates get this blue border around their icon. One of the main uses is when you're getting countered. You see an opponent making a run. Using partial team press to get your player to follow that run is an easy way to make sure you don't give away an easy opportunity to your opponent. I use it in extremely many instances when I lose the ball high up and my opponent starts a counter. The second place to use it is when you're trying to defend cutbacks. It'll cover the closest two players, which will allow you to put pressure on the ball holder while still having the passing options covered. The angle you approach from matters. Something as small as one step can decide which lane to open up for your opponent. So the angle you approach from decides what you allow your opponent to do. If you just rush straight at him, it makes it very easy to bypass the player and find the space behind. But if you come at them from an angle, you start guiding them to where you want them to be. It isn't only about the player in front of you. Your cover shadow is affected by the angle you approach from. So you need to keep in mind, where do you want to guide your opponent? Which lanes do you want to keep open? And where do you want your cover shadow to be defending when you push up to press against your opponent? As you can see in the example currently playing, I'm always angling my approach to guide my opponent outwards. I don't want him in the central part of the pitch. And before I move up to press, I always cut off the pass and then press using my shadow cover as a way of cutting off the player so he can't find a dangerous pass. Eventually my opponent gets impatient and passes it towards a lane that I'm already covering. Presence matters. If you look at how I defend, you see that I consistently push up to press against my opponents, whether that's manually with second man press or partial team press. The reason for this is about being present, being close to your opponent, forces your opponent to make a decision, whether that's trying to dribble against you, whether that's a pass. It forces a decision. And if you apply some of the tips I gave you in this video while having presence, you're going to force your opponent to make a mistake or a rushed decision, which will benefit you in the long run. One of the key aspects to how good of a defender you are in FC is how good are you at player switching. Number one is you need to use the right stick. And the second part is knowing when to switch. It's having purposeful switches that gets you the right defender before the danger happens. There are many different situations where you can look to switch player. While the ball's traveling, you have time to switch player. When your opponent takes his first touch and he has space, you've got time to switch. When your opponent has his back to goal or is dribbling in a situation that isn't dangerous, the only thing you don't want to do is spam switch or switch out of reaction to what your opponent is doing. If you're switching reactionary, it means you're behind in the game and it's a matter of time before your opponent pulls away. An overlooked aspect of defending is what exactly are you going to do when you win the ball? The first 3 to 5 seconds after you win the ball have such a huge importance of what the next sequence of play is going to be like. Your main priority there is to get it away from pressure as fast as possible. You don't want to create a chaos situation where you might be unlucky and your opponent might get the bounce. So immediately, if you can play it, always do it. That means as far back as possible. If that's the goalkeeper, it's better than risking a pass and allowing your opponent to win it back after you've worked so hard to get it. I'm surprised more people don't use this. It's one of my favorite things in the game, and it's the tactical foul. It is one of the best ways to disrupt your opponent, both in their flow and their mentality. The obvious time to use it is when you're getting countered and you don't want to risk conceding a goal. However, you can use it pretty much everywhere. I use it in situations where there's no real danger, just to mess around with my opponent a little bit and get into his head. Keep in mind that you will always get a yellow card for it. Be really careful so you don't use it when you already have a yellow card with a player. Learning how to defend is really hard, and unfortunately, in comparison to attacking, you cannot do this against the AI because the AI plays differently to how real people play. You just need to go out and play games while you pick one thing to focus on and genuinely focus on it. The result doesn't matter. Your attacking decisions doesn't matter. You can try to give away the ball consistently just to put yourself in the situations you want to work on, because it's impossible to focus on all of these things at the same time, or to be so focused on winning every single game that you don't pay attention to what you're doing. But yeah, that is all I had for this guide. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment and I'll do my best to answer, or you could always hit me up on any social media. I do stream my games on Twitch if you want to catch up outside of the videos. But until next time, I hope this is helpful and take care.